Hi, Adam. Really nice to see you. How you doing?
Yeah, very good, very good. Love to be here.
Really good to see you. Now, could you start by telling us your name and what you do at Small 99?
Yep. So my name is Adam Bastock. I'm the founder of Small 99, and we provide carbon reduction plans for micro businesses. That's really the key thing that we're trying to focus on. Is that can manifest in different ways. That might mean sustainability. It might mean net zero. It might mean climate action. It might mean supply chain stuff. And I'm sure we'll get into that. But carbon reduction planning is really what we're here for.
Okay, and I have to add that the reason I came across you is because of your fantastic networking. Is it a club networking kind of setup?
I don't really know what to call it. The People Planet Pint sort of movement it's been called, but community is also worth. It's whether like is it local chapters or just local meetups? I don't know. We've not really worked out the formality of it, but that's been a really great way for us to start trying to engage businesses and provide that slightly lower barrier to entry, a fun, ideally way to get involved with it, because I think climate and or carbon reduction planning is quite a scary topic in the best of times, no matter how you market it and talk about it. So try to provide a little bit more of a fun way to come along and go to the pub, have a chat, learn more about it, and then either take action or just educate yourself. It doesn't really matter.
It's a really, really lovely format, in my experience. Now, going back over to Small 99 side of things, what I'd love to ask you is about the business model. So, of your various services, if you want to choose one of them, I'd love you to tell us what it is, who goes about, who you sell it to, and what the problem is that it solves for them.
So I think the easiest answer to that is that the core problem is that small business focus, as we typically aim really at the bottom end of the market, which is a horrible way of phrasing it, but it is that micro business up to about 20 employees really is our sweet spot, where for me, they've got the most momentum, they've got the most power, they can change the quickest, they're the most sort of engaged. And my background is digital marketing, and having worked with them, if they wanted to do something, they would find the money and they would do it. And I think for me, that is how do we harness that energy and that power, but on climate instead and sustainability, and go, well, actually, if you just have a clear thing that you need to do, you might be able to then go ahead and do it. The way we sort of do that is in three different ways. So we've got the People Planet Pint events, and we're going to have more of those coming next year. And later this year, we're going to have different formats. And that's been really our biggest success to a certain extent in growing and bringing people together. And then we've got two other aspects where we do a lot of workshops and training. So we might work with a chamber of commerce or a local council or an organization, whoever it may be, to deliver training through them. So we take a series of businesses through workshops. That might be a 30-minute webinar on net zero versus carbon neutral and where do you get started, through to full sort of 10 hours of how do you measure, how do you build a reduction plan, what does the legislation look like, and the real detailed stuff. And then the kind of the third thing we've got is Small 99 Hero, where we are trying to build that tech platform where it's all the things that you need to do to get to net zero and beyond, and then go into circular economy and sustainability, but breaking that down into 10-minute steps so that you can really quickly and easily get started and manage your own journey, and then report that on that as well to external providers.
So how long have you been working on that platform?
Yes, the platform, we launched it probably about 9 months ago, I think. It was sort of September, October last year. And it's definitely been the challenge for us just in terms of developing that and learning and keeping up to speed with the industry. And it took us quite a while before that. So I think there's the challenge in this space is things are moving at such speed, which is great, that keeping up with them can be a bit of a challenge.
So is it a case of you've spent a lot of time and money developing the platform yourself, investing in it, and now you're ready gradually to go out to market with it, and there's a charging model associated with it?
Yeah, so with Hero, it's £15 a month. There's a free trial available, so please do go and sign up if you are listening to this, where you can then just get started and see if it's right for you. And the idea is we just want to get as many people onto that platform as possible for two reasons. One, financially, it makes a lot of sense for us, is that if we've got a few thousand businesses paying 15 quid a month, okay, that's quite affordable in theory for small business owners, but it gives us decent revenue. And two, it's the impact. And that's really the driver for me, is actually going, what would excite me is how do we get thousands of businesses to start getting on there and taking, even if it's just two actions, that suddenly gets them started. They might then unsubscribe and disappear from us. I don't really care about that necessarily, because then as long as they've started their journey, they're probably going to go off and start acting in other ways within their business and within their industry, and might find a better solution or find a different solution. I think it's really about providing that starting point is what.
So with that £15 a month, are you making it? Are you tying businesses into a minimum of a year, or just making it really easy for them to join and leave and join?
Really simple. So it's a rolling contract. Just get started. It's sort of the main message behind it, of trying to, again, it's removing those barriers to entry to go, look, there shouldn't be any reason why you can't at least give us a go.
And as I've known myself for ages, but this series of interviews is revealing to me as well that one of the hardest things for a small business to get right is pricing.
Yeah.
£15 strikes me as being very keen.
Yes.
Was that a kind of finger in the wind or rationale behind it? How did that come about?
It's certainly something that needs testing, and it's a bit of an educated finger in the wind, I'd like to think. So it was looking at other services as a business, looking at my marketing background, what services were businesses paying for and how much was that? And I think something like Calendly is a really good look at that, where it's £10 a month. Its functionality is very minimal, and therefore you can get started with it. And, it's worth that £10 because it saves you time. And ultimately that's what Hero does. It saves you time in researching, and it saves you time in then having to write your progress page to report to whoever it may be, suppliers or council or whatever it is. I think there is a question there over the pricing. £15 to some people is still too much. I think partly that's because they might not understand the value of what a carbon reduction plan looks like and what the other services are. If you've only seen £15 a month, that might seem like quite a lot of money for something that you don't need, compared to going to an agency that might charge you £15,000 for that, for example, which, like that are figures I've seen for carbon reduction plans for slightly larger organizations. And there's also a question of, is it too little, in the fact that, well, if there's a larger company that might be in a construction firm, for example, that is then going for a government tender worth £5 million, well, they're going to need a carbon reduction plan to bid for that contract, at which point £15 a month for a £5 million contract does not seem like very good kind of value positioning. So it's something that we need to test more of, I think, and that's kind of what is in our future, I guess, of looking at that and just challenging it a little bit.
And I can see some complexities where if you're scaling the pricing according to number of employees or turnover of the business, that's certainly a model we've seen. But then what is the extra value that you're going to be delivering them in terms of the functionality? Yeah, I can see quite complicated, quite interesting. And in terms of impact, I mean, there's clearly this, if you can sell this to lots of small businesses, you're clearly going to be creating positive impact. Are you able to measure that in any way?
Not really. It's sort of the honest answer to that. And I think this is really the challenge with carbon emissions and just looking at it from a carbon point of view. I'm sure there'll be people listening to this that will say carbon is not the answer. We need to be focusing on circular economy, but biodiversity, donut economics, etc., which I completely get and I do agree with. But I think carbon's a really rational starting point and is quite easy to quantify. But even within that, two businesses that have got 5 employees, they might have looking at their scope 3 commuting emissions, if they're walking to work or if they're driving the car to work or getting the train to work. The ability of them, if you've got a company that's got 5 people driving to that office versus 5 people that are walking to work, okay, there's some broad assumptions there that the people walking to work it's probably a centrally located business. So it doesn't really matter about the town or where they are located. But if I'm recommending to a company that's got 5 employees who are driving to work, oh, you should get the train, that's great if the train line exists. I can do a carbon reduction calculation for that relatively easily, but ultimately, if the local infrastructure doesn't exist, my advice, doesn't matter how well I market it, isn't going to go anywhere. So that's the sort of challenge that we're wrestling with. The quantification of it is very easy up front and on paper, but in the real world, it suddenly starts falling down quite quickly of being, and I don't think it's a technical one, it's more of an emotional one, of does it just become patronizing?
My sense here, though, is that we have to start somewhere. And you've made a start, and your system is going to, at the very least, you can say we've got this many number of organizations with this many employees who are all making a start, all making an effort. That's a start. In due course, you can get much more sophisticated about how you measure it and what you include and all the rest of it. So I think I absolutely see where you are with that. I think that's really cool. You mentioned barriers to growth.
Really goes back to the pricing element of just picking our sort of battle to where that lands. And I think there's several moving factors here of there's the early kind of minority, or the innovators, as it were, who are really keen to try out these tools and or keen just more broadly to take climate action. If you're looking at the climate movement as an example, as a customer base, the question for me is how do I get almost climate deniers onto Small 99 Hero? That is sort of the kind of the holy grail of going. If they're doing it for business purposes, and if they're installing solar panels because it makes more financial sense and it's cheaper and reduces down the reporting requirements, I don't really care what their stance on is in climate. And as long as they're paying 15 quid a month and getting value out of it, then that's where we need to be. That's where we're not right now. And that's the biggest barrier, is that I think a lot of our messaging has focused on climate and sort of climate change and making impact. And I think that's probably something that we need to change. But I don't think that's going to be a quick thing. I think that's going to be a real learning curve over the next 5 years, to be honest with you. I think it's a language that will resonate with some people, and there's a language that will resonate not at all with others.
And I think that's a very interesting point you make, because I think that the organizations like Extinction Rebellion and Just Stop Oil and so forth have done very well at recruiting people who already understand what the problem is, but they've not been as appealing to the wider community, which is where are you familiar with the Climate Majority
Yes.
project? Which is, so seeing that and hearing you talking, I think we're at a really interesting inflection point, hopefully, where more people are going to start to realize what's happening and what they need to be doing.
I completely agree. And the only question I've got, and I know the Climate Majority Project is quite new, but even having climate in the name of it, does that put people off immediately? Because it kind of attracts that connection with people. And this is something we really tried with People Planet Pint, was meant to be that sort of gateway between normal people and the climate movement. Not to say that normal people aren't, etc. No offense intended. But that sort of idea of how do we get them across the threshold and into an environment where they're curious. And that's really how we describe People Planet Pint, is it is for the climate curious to come along and find out more. And it is that we've had people who have come along to that who are, clearly bought into the climate change. They're not activists. They know that climate change is real. And it's this idea of the persuadables, where I can't remember who did the report now, which is going to bug me, but there's 15% of people who are kind of us, activists, very deep into the space, trying to kind of build our lives around it. There are 15% of people who just are deniers and aren't going to be converted at all, and we shouldn't spend our energy on them. And that's where the energy is currently going. And then you've got this 70% of people in the middle. I think it was part of the Climate Outreach Project. And that 70% are the persuadables who are sat there reading the news going, this looks terrifying. What do I do about it? Yeah. And they don't know where to go. And that's where I think Small 99 is trying to sit, is turning that 70% into the 15% through things like People Planet Pint and through things like Small 99 Hero, but through businesses. And I think that's the challenge of going, actually, how do we empower people through the kind of the business activity to start taking action, even if they don't feel like they can in their own lives.
Indeed. My last real question is, can you share one thing that has gone wrong in the business recently? And I ask this because it's the humanizing one. We see so much on social media about how amazing things are, but actually hearing the struggles of folks is a really nice thing to share as well.
I think it is. I mean, the big one that stands out, and I'm going to cheat slightly in that it's not a complete failure, was we did a really big event. We did the People Planet Pint at Stroud Brewery. Fantastic day, fantastic event, loads of speakers along, loads of small businesses in the room doing great stuff, etc., etc. So on social media, it looked perfect, but that cost us, a couple of grand, I think, in losses because of travel and then putting on food and just doing and like the ancillary sort of organization of it. And we just didn't have any sponsors on the day. We didn't have any sort of way to monetize it at all, and we didn't really want to be honest with you. It was more about just bringing people together, and it's that sort of thing where that is very much a learning point for me in the past few kind of months of going, okay, great event. It was worth spending that money. I do not regret it at all. It was a really good mistake to make. And it's quite a fun mistake in the grand scheme of things. But how do we start taking that and actually going, do you know what, for Small 99 to be sustainable, we're going to need to start doing those events, but making sure that they do balance the books and that we're not just throwing them.
That's quite an expensive mistake. Fantastic.
Yeah.
Look, thank you so much. Last of all, how can people find out more about Small 99?
Brilliant. Yeah, so the website, small99.co.uk, and then, small99.co.uk/hero for more events. But my main will be go along and find a local People Planet Pint to you. There'll be one in your area. We're in about 60 cities across the UK and Europe. So please do head along and get yourself a pint and learn stuff.
And yourself, Adam, I know you're very active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, so just LinkedIn and then search Adam Bastock. I should be coming up, and I think I've got the URL as well. There's not many Bastocks in the world, so managed to score that one.
Adam, that's absolutely brilliant. Thank you so much. Speak to you.
Cheers, Ed. Bye.